When the waiting feels unbearably difficult and like there's no possible way to come through, and you're tempted to take matters into your own hands in a way that you know is completely disobedient, it is very well possible that your answer is just about to come. So hang on and keep trusting God. Hello and welcome back to my channel. Today's video is titled, Trust God, Don't Take Matters into Your Own Hands. Do you feel like God is taking too long? Like maybe you've been waiting and praying and doing all the right things, but nothing seems to be happening, and you're starting to wonder if maybe you need to step in and do something yourself? That is exactly where King Saul found himself in 1 Samuel chapter 13. In this story, the pressure was mounting, fear was spreading, people were beginning to lose faith in King Saul, and Saul knew what God had commanded him to do, which was to wait. But instead of trusting in God's timing, Saul took matters into his own hands, and in doing so, he lost everything that God wanted to give him. This story is such a powerful reminder that time is not our enemy when we are waiting on God, because when we rush ahead of God's timing, we might get what we think we want, but we'll lose what God has meant for us. So in today's Bible study, we're going to unpack this story in 1 Samuel chapter 13. We're going to talk about what it really means to wait on God, even when it feels impossible, even when everything in you wants to take control. Before we get into it, I want to take a moment to thank the sponsor of today's video, and that is Hillsdale College. You guys already know what a huge fan I am of their free online courses, particularly their biblical and theological ones. Their David story course helped me to understand the books of 1 and 2 Samuel so much more, and just opened my eyes to so many details and insights that I just wouldn't have caught. And I'm so excited about a new course they just launched on November 6th called Colonial America. This course is more like a documentary mini-series. It's more dramatic and narrative driven than many of their courses, and it is fascinating. It brings to life the story of the earliest American settlers, how they built something lasting by trusting God, working hard, and standing for freedom. Faith and moral conviction guided these early Americans, and their courage and perseverance turned a wilderness into a community. What a powerful reminder to us today as we talk about trusting God in the waiting and standing firm in our convictions when it would sometimes feel easier to give in and take the easier route. This documentary is so incredible because not only does it bring to life the history of our country, it also highlights the virtues our country was founded on and shows how those same virtues of faith, of courage, and of liberty are still so incredibly vital today. Hillsdale's courses have a way of sharing history that is so interesting and so engaging, and I'm so excited to work my way through this new documentary mini-series, Colonial America. And so if you want to join me in watching it or taking any of the other free Hillsdale College online courses, you can go right now to hillsdale.edu/Kaci. Again, they're all free, no cost. You can start whenever and go at your own pace. So again, that's hillsdale.edu/Kaci to enroll. I'm going to have that link down in my description as well. And a huge thank you to Hillsdale for working with me on today's video. If you haven't already, please be sure to subscribe to my channel. I make Christian faith and lifestyle content aimed at encouraging you to know God more through His Word and to grow in His likeness. And I would love to have you here, and then give this video a thumbs up if you find it helpful or encouraging. Now let's get into today's passage. We're going to be looking at 1 Samuel 13 verses 1 through 14. I encourage you to pull out your Bible and read along with me. I'm going to be reading from the ESV, English Standard Version, and I'm also going to have the text up on the screen. Here's what it says. Saul lived for 1 year and then became king. And when he had reigned for 2 years over Israel, Saul chose 3,000 men of Israel. 2,000 were with Saul in Michmash and the hill country of Bethel, and 1,000 were with Jonathan in Gibeah of Benjamin. The rest of the people he sent home, every man to his tent. Jonathan defeated the garrison of the Philistines that was at Beba, and the Philistines heard of it. And Saul blew the trumpet throughout all the land, saying, "Let the Hebrews hear." And all Israel heard it said that Saul had defeated the garrison of the Philistines, and also that Israel had become a stench to the Philistines. And the people were called out to join Saul at Gilgal. And the Philistines mustered to fight with Israel 30,000 chariots and 6,000 horsemen, and troops like the sand on the seashore in multitude. They came up and encamped at Michmash to the east of Beth Aven. When the men of Israel saw that they were in trouble, for the people were hard pressed, the people hid themselves in caves and in holes and in rocks and in tombs and in cisterns, and some Hebrews crossed the fords of the Jordan to the land of Gad and Gilead. Saul was still at Gilgal, and all the people followed him trembling. He waited 7 days, the time appointed by Samuel. But Samuel did not come to Gilgal, and the people were scattering from him. So Saul said, "Bring the burnt offering here to me and the peace offerings." And he offered the burnt offering. As soon as he had finished offering the burnt offering, behold, Samuel came. And Saul went out to meet him and greet him. Samuel said, "What have you done?" And Saul said, "When I saw that the people were scattering from me, and that you did not come within the days appointed, and that the Philistines had mustered at Michmash, I said, now the Philistines will come down and against me at Gilgal, and I have not sought the favor of the Lord. So I forced myself, and I offered the burnt offering." And Samuel said to Saul, "You have done foolishly. You have not kept the command of the Lord your God, which he commanded you. For then the Lord would have established your kingdom over Israel forever. But now your kingdom shall not continue. The Lord has sought out a man after his own heart, and the Lord has commanded him to be prince over his people, because you have not kept what the Lord commanded you." So to recap what's happening here, Saul had reigned as king for a couple years over Israel, when he then at this point in the story chooses 3,000 men. 2,000 he keeps with himself, and 1,000 he sends with Jonathan, who is his son. And Jonathan then attacks a Philistine outpost at Geba, which provoked the Philistines to prepare a massive counterattack. And in response, Saul summoned all of Israel to join him at Gilgal to prepare for this imminent attack from the Philistines. And so meanwhile, though, the Philistines are gathering this huge army, and the Israelites become terrified. So much so that in verse 6, which we already read, it says, "The people hid themselves in caves and in holes and in rocks and in tombs and in cisterns." So Israel is terrified because the Philistines are gathering this massive army and they're hiding. And so while Saul is waiting at Gilgal, it says that his troops are trembling in fear and scattering. And Samuel, the prophet Samuel, had told Saul to wait 7 days for him to come, meaning for Samuel to come and offer the sacrifices. But when Samuel didn't arrive within that time frame, and Saul saw the situation getting more and more dire, he took matters into his own hands and he offered the burnt offering himself. Now, the problem with this is that only a priest such as Samuel was authorized to do this, was authorized to offer the burnt offering. So right as Saul finishes offering the burnt offering, Samuel appears and he confronts Saul's disobedience. Saul defends himself and makes excuses saying, "Well, I knew the Philistines were going to attack and we still didn't have the blessing and the favor of the Lord, so I forced myself to do something that I knew I wasn't supposed to do." I think it's just funny that he uses the language, "I forced myself," because it wasn't something he was supposed to do. But anyways, as a result, Saul is told by Samuel that his kingship now would not continue. So hopefully that summary kind of helps you wrap your head around what is going on in this story, because I know we read a pretty long passage, but now we're going to walk back through it again and unpack it, because this story truly gives us some powerful, profound insights about walking with God, and also specifically about waiting on God. And the first thing I want to point out here is we see that Jonathan's attack on the Philistines awakened them. So previously the Israelites had been weak and subjected to their enemy, but the second they showed boldness and courage against their enemy, it says in 1 Samuel 13:4 that Israel had become a stench to the Philistines. And the same is true for us spiritually. The more we show courage and boldness to the Lord, the more of a threat we're going to become to the enemy. The Philistines were okay with the Israelites when they were just kind of hanging out, laying low, not really bringing a real threat. But the second they attack, that's when they become a stench. I also want to point out here that Saul took credit for Jonathan's bold attack on the Philistines, which ties back to what we talked about in last week's video, that Saul was after the heart of people. He was after prestige, he was after image, he was after their approval, so much so to the point that he took credit for something that was done by his own son. Even his own son couldn't receive credit rightfully in his eyes because Saul was after the heart of people, not after the heart of God. And the next thing I want to point out, which we already mentioned in the intro, but I want to unpack more, is that time is not our enemy when we are waiting on God. 1 Samuel 13:8 says, he, Saul, waited 7 days, the time appointed by Samuel. So with each day that passed as Saul waited on Samuel, I'm sure Saul's anxiety grew. Saul probably felt that he needed to make a quick attack before the Philistines could have time to organize their army, and then the more he waited, his troops began to lose confidence in him and they began to scatter. A note on this from the Enduring Word commentary says that Saul felt time was his enemy, and the question I have is, how often is this us? We feel like the longer we wait, the chances of the thing we are waiting for actually happening or coming to pass start to diminish. It starts to become less likely. The longer we wait, the more our anxiety grows. And so does our temptation to take matters into our own hands. But in reality, if Saul had obeyed and trusted God, God could have easily taken care of Samuel and the timing. God was bigger than the Philistine army, just like God is bigger than whatever circumstances seem to make our areas of waiting impossible. And so the question is, will we trust him? And the last thing I want to point out is that the final stretch of waiting is often the most difficult. So Saul disobeys by offering the burnt offering himself, even though only a priest such as Samuel was authorized to do it. And then it says in 1 Samuel 13:10, as soon as he had finished offering the burnt offering, behold, Samuel came. How crazy is that? If Saul had waited even just 1 hour longer after waiting already for an entire week, this story could have gone so much differently. If he had just held on, if he had just trusted God just a little bit longer, this story could have had a different outcome. A note on this from the Enduring Word commentary says, the last moments of waiting are usually the most difficult, and they powerfully tempt us to take matters into our own hands. When the waiting feels unbearably difficult and like there's no possible way to come through, and you're tempted to take matters into your own hands in a way that you know is completely disobedient, it is very well possible that your answer is just about to come. So hang on and keep trusting God. Even if your answer isn't right around the corner, it is still worth it to wait on the Lord, because remember, the only thing harder than waiting on God is wishing you had, which I unpacked more in this video here that I will link above. So Saul takes matters into his own hands, and ultimately this leads to Saul's kingship being cut off and it being given over to David instead, because God wanted a man after his own heart. And this is just a reminder that when we take matters into our own hands, not only does it prevent us from receiving God's best in his timing, it may also produce unintended complications and consequences that we never would have had to deal with if we would have simply waited on the Lord. And if you want to learn more about what it looks like to become a woman after God's own heart, I have an entire video breaking that down based off of this story as well that I will link above. I pray this video is an encouragement to you to continue trusting in the Lord, waiting on the Lord, even when it feels impossible. And down in the comments, I would love for you to write out a short prayer asking God to help you to trust him in the waiting. Let's read through each other's prayers and be encouraged as we wait on the Lord. And as a reminder, if you want to join me in watching the free Colonial America documentary with Hillsdale College, you can go right now to hillsdale.edu/Kaci to enroll. Thank you so much for being with me in today's video, and I will see you in my next one. Bye.